Her own attorney once called her the most hated woman in America.
Jesus Christ knows that no one was murdered.
Doomsday mom Lori Vallow Daybell.
Anything that comes out of her mouth is a lie.
Known in infamy.
Tell us where the kids are.
Did you do something to your children?
For doing the unspeakable.
Investigators recovered 2 sets of human remains in Chad Daybell's backyard, and tonight, family members are confirming to 12 News the remains belong to J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan.
First convicted in Idaho for murdering her children, Tylee and J.J.
It's destroyed people.
And for her role in the death of Tammy Daybell, her current husband, Chad Daybell's first wife.
We have to live with the fact that we're not going to have the people we love in our lives anymore.
Now she's convicted in Arizona.
Guilty.
For conspiring to kill her former husband, Charles Vallow.
Lost her mind.
We gotcha.
Dark religious beliefs at the core of these crimes.
You justified all of this by going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole, and clearly you are still down there.
With each trial,
None of us believed her cock and bull story.
the web of people impacted by these crimes only amplifies.
These cases are hard.
That's insane.
And Vallow Daybell refuses to accept responsibility
We will both be exonerated in the future.
or her fate.
She'll be rotting in prison where she deserves to be.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Stapleton with the 12 News I-Team. In April, an Arizona jury heard the story of Lori Vallow Daybell and the death of her husband, Charles Vallow, for the first time. But they didn't get the full backstory. They weren't supposed to know that she's a convicted murderer in Idaho, where she will spend the rest of her life in prison. One of the biggest differences between the case in Idaho and her first trial in Arizona is that she chose to represent herself, a spectacle that drew in packed courtrooms nearly every day for more than 2 weeks. As Vallow Daybell prepares to face a second trial in Arizona for another murder conspiracy case, we're taking a look back at some of the most bizarre and impactful moments from her first murder conspiracy trial, starting with the prosecutor's opening statements.
So I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple days. Mel, too. She can't go to Utah. They're planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thanks for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. Lori Daybell, the woman seated over here, wrote this to her brother, Alex Cox, on July 9th of 2019, 2 days before they killed Charles Vallow. But to understand why this is so meaningful, why this is relevant, you have to understand the context. So let's talk about it. In July of 2019, Lori Vallow was married to Charles Vallow. Lori Vallow lived here in Arizona, Chandler. Charles Vallow lived in Texas. In July of 2019, Lori Daybell was Lori Vallow, married to Charles Vallow. In July of 2019, Lori Vallow wanted to be Lori Daybell, wife of Chad Daybell. And in July of 2019, Lori Vallow wanted to keep the same lifestyle that she had with Charles. And she could get all of this if Charles was dead. She could marry Chad Daybell and become Lori Daybell. She would get a $1 million life insurance policy from Charles Vallow. She would get Social Security for herself and their son, JJ, as a child of a dead spouse. And all of this would be true if Charles Vallow was dead.
Maricopa County Prosecutor Trina Kay laid out the state's case that Lori Vallow Daybell conspired with her brother to kill her former husband, Charles Vallow, all so she could take his money and be with a man who would become her new husband, doomsday author Chad Daybell. According to the investigation surrounding these cases, Chad and Lori believed they were members of the 144,000 preparing for a second coming of Christ. It's believed they ranked people in their lives on a scale of dark and light. Dark meaning a person is a zombie, possessed by a dark spirit. Back in July 2019, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, shot and killed Charles Vallow at Lori's home in Chandler. He can't be charged in this case because he died in December 2019, reportedly of natural causes. After he shot Charles Vallow, Cox claimed self-defense, but the prosecutor said otherwise.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case is going to show you that Lori Vallow Daybell conspired with her brother, Alex Cox, to kill her husband, Charles Vallow. When Charles let Lori know he was coming into town, she quickly got the pieces into place. Alex came to her house with a gun. Lori created the way to keep Charles inside the house so that Alex and she could be like Nephi. To kill Charles Vallow to better at least her life so she could be with Chad and she could live off that life insurance policy. As we go through this trial, you will see photos of Charles's injury, photos of the crime scene, and hear testimony that will prove that this was not self-defense. As we go through this trial, you'll be provided with phone calls, emails, text messages, and hear testimony that lays out the motive for this murder: money and Chad Daybell. You will see text messages and hear from people who Lori trusted and who were later pushed away, people who really don't want to be part of this trial, but were pulled into it by this defendant and her desire to get rid of Charles to be with Chad. People who heard Lori for months saying Charles was gone, possessed. People who will establish that this murder was premeditated. You will hear text messages from July 9th by Lori to her brother, Alex Cox, that he had to stay near her, that it was all coming to a head, and she would be like Nephi, and so would he. A justified killing, just like the prophet. And later, the text message to Chad where she told him that Charles changed the life insurance policy before they got rid of Ned. A confession by Lori of how religion and money were twisted to justify Charles's murder. At the end of this trial, the state will come to you and ask you to hold the defendant responsible for the death of Charles Vallow and find her guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Thank you.
Then, Lori Vallow Daybell addressed the jury directly for the first time.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have been charged with a crime, a serious crime. And the only question here is, did I commit this crime? Conspiracy. Conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit a crime. Okay, so you see? Okay. There has to be an agreement. There has to be a plan. The evidence in this case will show that Charles Vallow and I got married in February 2006. It will show that it was my fourth marriage and Charles' third marriage. At that time, we each had 2 children. I had Colby, who was 9, and Tylee, who was 3. Charles had Cole, who was also 9, and Zach, who was 7. The evidence will show that our family moved from Austin, Texas to Chandler, Arizona in 2009. The evidence will show that Charles and I adopted our great-nephew, JJ, who was born in 2012. It will also show that Charles and I were married for over 13 years and were raising 5 children. The evidence will show that I was a licensed cosmetologist and worked as a hairstylist for 20 years while we lived in Austin, Texas. The evidence will show that Charles was a licensed life insurance salesman and worked as an independent contractor, selling life insurance policies and annuities, and owned his own business. The evidence will show that Charles and I purchased life insurance policies early in our marriage, and Charles had them issued to the maximum amount possible to each of us. The evidence will show that Charles was 17 years older than me, and that because of Charles' age and an issue that he had with high blood pressure, the maximum amount of life insurance that could be approved for Charles was $1 million. The maximum amount of life insurance that I could be approved for because of my age and my health was $2 million. The evidence will show that throughout our 13-year marriage that we always had life insurance policies. When a 10-year policy lapsed, Charles would shop for another company who would approve us for the maximum amount of life insurance. The evidence will show that this was Charles' job. This is what he did. I helped him in this business, and this is what he did. The evidence will show that in 2016, Charles repurchased a new $2 million life insurance policy on me, and he was the sole beneficiary. The evidence will show that Charles and I had a happy marriage for 13 years, that he was, in fact, a baseball player, and that he played high school, college ball, and AAA ball, and that he was, in fact, a left-handed pitcher, a southpaw, they call him, but he was a right-handed batter, as could be attested to by anybody who knew Charles well and his high school baseball coach, Greg Davis. The evidence will show that Tylee was, and in 2014, our family moved from Chandler, Arizona to Kauai, Hawaii. We lived there for 3.5 years and returned to Chandler in 2017. The evidence will show that Tylee was 3 years old when Charles and I got married, and that when she became a teenager, the relationship between Tylee and her stepfather, Charles, became so difficult that Tylee and Charles had to seek a therapist, a family therapist, to stop them from fighting. The evidence will show that together, Charles and Tylee met with this therapist after we moved back to the mainland in 2017. The evidence will show that in April of 2018, Tylee's biological father passed away from a heart attack. And at that time, Charles called Social Security and made an appointment at the Social Security office.
I'm going to object to hearsay.
Sustain.
It will show that we did get Social Security for Tylee for her deceased father until she was 18 years old, and she was 15 years old at the time. The evidence will show that Charles and Tylee's fighting increased greatly in January of 2019 when Charles and I temporarily separated. The evidence will show that several people witnessed these terrible arguments between Tylee and Charles that increased to physical in 2019. Charles and Tylee had major increasing arguments, 2 in February of 2019, 1 of March in 2019, which was captured on video, 1 in May of 2019, 1 in June of 2019, and then the worst of all in July 2019. The evidence will show that in March of 2019, Charles pulled JJ out of his special school and moved him to Houston, Texas, while we were temporarily separated. Tylee and I then joined Charles and JJ in Texas in April 2019 to reconcile. The evidence will show that JJ was diagnosed with severe autism when he was 3 years old while we lived in Hawaii. The evidence will show that for 2 years, JJ was attending a school in Gilbert, Arizona, a special school for children with autism. It's called Lauren's Life Academy. The evidence will show that in June of 2019, in JJ's best interest, Tylee, JJ, and I moved back to Chandler, Arizona to re-enroll JJ back in Lauren's Life Academy since he had a difficult time with the Houston, Texas schools with no services for his autism. The evidence will show that Charles and I agreed it was in JJ's best interest to be in school where more services were available to him, so Charles and I rented a house here in Chandler. On the day in question, July 11th, 2019, Charles and I were renting 2 houses, one in Houston, Texas, where he mainly resided, and one in Chandler, Arizona, where I resided with our 2 minor children, Tylee and JJ. By this time, our 3 older boys, Colby, Cole, and Zach, were adults and not living at home any longer. The evidence will show that during the months of June and July, that my husband, Charles Vallow, began to send me threatening text messages. These messages were seen by my sister Summer, and that worried her. The evidence will show that Charles insisted on flying into Phoenix on July 10th, as we've heard from the state. The evidence will show that I advised Charles that he could not stay with us at the Chandler house because he could not get along with Tylee, and I did not want them to get into another fight like they had 3 weeks prior. The evidence will show that it was ultimately decided between Charles and I on text messages that he would stay in a hotel because he traveled for business all the time and stayed in hotels all the time, and that I would book it for him since I worked for him and booked all of his travel. The evidence will show that Charles did, in fact, fly into Phoenix on Wednesday, July 10th, and stayed in the hotel that I booked for him. The evidence will show that Charles paid to fly my brother Adam Cox into Phoenix from Kansas on the same day, Wednesday, July 10th, 2019. The evidence will show that Charles planned to come to our Chandler home and pick up JJ and drive him to school on Thursday morning, July 11th, 2019. The evidence will also show you that Lauren's Life Academy opens its gates at 8:25 a.m. in the morning. And the evidence will show that Charles showed up at our Chandler residence around 7:30 in the rental car I booked for him on the morning of Thursday, July 11th, 2019. The evidence will show that Charles began texting with my brother, Adam Cox, before he entered our residence, and that Charles and Adam were discussing in their text communications that my other brother, Alex Cox, was at the residence. The evidence will show that on the morning of July 11th, that Tylee was asleep in her room and my brother Alex was asleep in the guest room. The evidence will show that when Charles entered the house, only JJ and I were awake and present. The evidence will show that after we put JJ in the rental car, that Charles came back into the residence to receive his phone, leaving JJ in the front seat of the rental car with the engine running. He was 7 years old. The evidence will show that Charles began to scream at me when I refused to hand him his phone. The evidence will show that Charles' screaming woke up Tylee and Alex. The evidence will show that Tylee came out of her room with a bat to protect me, her mother, from her stepfather, Charles Vallow. The evidence will show that Tylee and Charles fought over the bat, and that after a struggle over the bat, Tylee fell onto the ground, and Charles lifted up the bat to hit Tylee with the bat. The evidence will show that Alex then intervened to protect Tylee from being hit with the bat. He did not have a gun. He was not wearing a shirt. He was pulling up his jeans because he just woke up and came into the room where he heard the screaming. The evidence will show that Alex and Charles got into a physical struggle for the bat and fell onto the ground. The evidence will show that Tylee, who was on the ground, was lifted up by me and sent outside to get away from the struggle and to protect JJ, who was still in the running car, in the rental car in the driveway. The evidence will show that after this struggle on the ground between Charles and Alex, that Charles prevailed with the bat and began to come towards me with the bat as I ran away from him into the kitchen. The evidence will show that at some point while I was running away from Charles, who was chasing me with the bat, that Alex apparently retrieved his gun. The evidence will show that I ran outside to the children and that Alex shot Charles in self-defense. The evidence will show that Tylee and I had both run outside without shoes. The evidence will show that JJ was still in the front seat of the rental car with the engine running and struggling to get out of the car. Tylee was trying to keep him in. The evidence will show that Tylee and I got into the rental car with JJ and drove away. The evidence will show you that I drove the children away from the residence towards JJ's school. Can I grab a tissue?
Yes.
The evidence will show that I drove the children through the Burger King drive-thru that Charles had promised JJ. The evidence will show that we continued to drive towards JJ's school and that the gate was not yet open at JJ's school. So we drove a block west of the school to a Walgreens where I ran in to purchase flip-flops for Tylee and myself so that we could walk JJ into school on the hot pavement. The evidence will show that Tylee and I returned directly to our residence where we met with police in our driveway. The evidence will show that we were spoken to by the Chandler police officers. And the evidence will show that Tylee and I were told by the Chandler police detectives that Charles had passed away. The evidence will show that we were put into a police van and driven to the Chandler Police Department. The evidence will show that Alex was taken by police in a police car to the Chandler Police Department, and that we were all three separated into interrogation rooms and we were each interviewed. The evidence will show that next, Tylee and I were brought back together into a room at the Chandler Police Department and were introduced to a victim's advocate who was very kind to us. The evidence will show that after speaking to the victim's advocate, that Tylee, Alex, and myself were put back into the police van and driven back to our residence. We were directed by the Chandler detectives to take the rental car and return later to the residence after we picked up JJ from school. The evidence will show that we did as instructed by the Chandler detectives. The evidence will show that we drove to Alex's residence where we attended to the wound on the back of his head. The evidence will show that Alex was then contacted by the Chandler detectives to return to the residence so that Alex could walk them through the events that occurred with the detectives at the residence. The evidence will show that Alex, Tylee, and I did return to the residence as instructed. And the evidence will show that Alex entered into the residence with Detective Moffett, but that Tylee and I were met by Detective Inklin in the front yard. The evidence will show that at the time, Detective Inklin asked Tylee and myself if we had Charles' cell phone. Tylee retrieved Charles' cell phone from the rental car and gave it to Detective Inklin at 3:11 p.m. on July 11th, 2019. And at that time, Charles' phone was placed in the custody of Chandler police detectives. The evidence will show that Detective Inklin asked us if we knew the passcode on Charles' phone, which Tylee proceeded to give to Detective Inklin. The evidence will show that Tylee and I left the residence to pick up JJ from school, while Alex remained at the residence with the detectives. The evidence will show that by the time Tylee, JJ, and I returned to the residence, that all police, EMS, CSI, and detectives were gone from the residence and only Alex remained. The evidence will show that the next day, I contacted Chandler police to inform them that Charles' belongings were still at the hotel. I asked the detective if I should go get them, and I was told that they would take care of it. The evidence will show that I asked the detectives, what should we do next? And they directed us that they would contact us in about 3 weeks after their supervisor passed off their reports and Alex could go to the police station and retrieve his gun. The evidence will show that the last thing I heard from Chandler Police Department until June of 2021, 2 years later, when I received a grand jury indictment from them for this alleged crime. The evidence will show that Chandler Police treated this incident as self-defense.
I'm going to object to that.
Objection sustained. The jury should disregard that last statement.
The evidence will show you that my brother, Alex Cox, passed away on December 12th, 2019, almost exactly 5 months to the day after Charles, my husband, passed away. The evidence will show that Alex passed away from a blood clot in his lung.
Objection again.
I'll sustain the objection. It's not relevant for this matter.
The evidence will show you that I am the only person being charged with this crime.
I'm going to object to the relevance of that.
Sustained.
As the state has mentioned, they are alleging that insurance money was my motive. Social Security was my motive. Spouses having insurance policies is not a crime. Collecting Social Security is not a crime. Self-defense is not a crime. A family tragedy is not a crime. It's a tragedy. Thank you.
Ahead of this trial, I spoke with a prosecutor in Idaho who told me that Lori Vallow Daybell is going to try and blame everybody but herself for what happened. That's her MO. And we saw that not only in her opening statements, but when she had the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses. In all, the prosecutor called 19 witnesses from law enforcement to first responders to people in Charles and Lori's families. She showed the jury photos from the scene, body camera footage, text messages. Witnesses talked about Vallow Daybell's nonchalant demeanor at the scene, how Vallow Daybell thought her husband Charles was possessed by an evil spirit. But when Vallow Daybell tried to cross-examine a Chandler detective, things took an interesting turn.
Were you present, detective, when my husband was shot?
No, ma'am.
Is there a video recording of it?
To my knowledge, no.
So is your opinion then an educated guess about what really happened?
It's based on known facts.
Okay. Were you aware, detective, that my husband and my brother were very good friends?
No, ma'am, I didn't know the relationship.
Did you know that they hung out and played golf together?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm going somewhere with this.
Well, I guess.
My follow-up question will explain.
I guess you can answer if you knew that they played golf.
I did not know.
In all of your investigation of my life, you never came across this information?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Are you familiar with my husband's wishes for his funeral?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Did you learn in your investigation that he named my brother Alex as one of his 5 best friends?
And I'm going to object again to relevance.
Sustained.
Each time Vallow Daybell tried to cast doubt by cross-examining witnesses, the prosecutor came back on redirect to establish the evidence and poke holes in what Vallow Daybell was trying to allege. And the tension did not stop there. The state's next witness, Nancy Jo Hancock, a woman who went on a date with Charles Vallow the night before he was shot.
Yes or no? Did Charles talk to you about why he was separated from his wife?
Yes.
Based upon your discussions, how long did you think there had been issues going on between Charles and his wife?
For several months, but more intensely since the beginning of that year was 2019, so since the beginning of that year.
You told us that Charles talked to you let me ask you, yes or no, did he talk to you in great detail about his relationship with Lori Vallow?
Yes.
You told us you met on an LDS dating site, right?
Correct.
So are you a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
I am.
Was there anything that you were hearing that you thought were outside of your beliefs?
A lot of things.
As Charles was telling you these things about his wife, can you tell us his demeanor? What his voice was like, what his attitude was like as he's talking about that?
I just remember thinking that he was strangely calm and still kind towards Lori, even through what they were going through.
You told us you were aware he had a child. Did you know where that child lived, who the child lived with?
Yes.
Who was that?
He was living with Lori at that time.
He
had older children as well, but the young one was living with Lori.
You have these conversations with Charles about his wife and these things that to you seem outside the LDS religion. Why do you keep talking to him?
Well, he was very charming and kind and funny and very clever, really good banter. a lot of craziness going on around him, but he seemed pretty awesome.
Now, you guys had just known each other for a few days. Did you think you and Charles were exclusive?
Heavens, no.
So would you be surprised to learn that he was talking to other people on other websites?
Not at all.
Did he, in fact, share some of that with you?
He did. He shared some pictures of some woman that had sent him that were quite scanty, and then proceeded to ask him for money, and thought how funny that was, that that's what people were doing online.
Did you eventually meet Charles in person?
I did.
And how many times did you get to meet him in person?
Just once.
What day was that?
He was flying in from Houston, and we had arranged to go to dinner that night. His plane was delayed, and so I met him that night on the 10th of July.
July 10th, was that 2019?
Correct.
And was that then here in Arizona that you met?
It was.
You said that you had original plans to meet and they got pushed back?
Yeah, his plane was delayed, so we met a little later than we were supposed to.
Where did you guys meet? What did you do?
At the Keg restaurant by Santan Mall, and we ate, but we talked until the restaurant closed. We were the last people there.
So you shut the place down?
We did. I finally looked around and I realized that we were the only ones there, and told him we probably should leave, and then we went outside and talked by my truck for another 45 minutes or so.
Based upon everything you had heard, was Charles coming in to see you, or was there some other reason he was in Arizona?
Charles was ecstatic to see JJ. He was coming to see JJ, so excited to take him to school the next morning. He was also coming to look for a place to live. He had an appointment to meet a realtor friend after he had taken JJ to school. And then he was also supposed to meet with Lori's brother, Adam.
So you and Charles have this evening on the 10th. Were you going to meet again?
Yeah, we were supposed to meet up in the late afternoon after he got through with the things that I just said.
So did you have a set time for the next day?
Mm-mm.
Can you describe Charles? Was he a fit man? What was his size?
Very fit and into physical fitness. And while we were talking, I know that he was swimming. I got to go to the gym, and very, very fit, strong.
When you were talking with Charles on July 10th that evening, let me ask first, do you recall about what time you ended up meeting him?
It was around 7. I got there first, and but it was right around 7, between 7 and 7:15, I'd say.
And do you recall about how long you guys were together until you finally left?
The restaurant closed at 10, and they were closed and no one else was there, so it was after that we left. And then, like I said, we stood by my truck and talked for another half hour, 45 minutes after that.
So a later evening.
Yes.
Can you tell us, you said that you understood he was going to go see his son. What was his demeanor about with regards to JJ and seeing his son?
Like a kid on Christmas morning. He was very excited to see JJ.
You had talked about his demeanor when he would talk about his wife. On that evening or ever, did you ever hear him swear or use derogatory names or anything like that towards Lori Vallow?
I was surprised with the details that he was describing to me, how kindly he still spoke about Lori, and his hope was that she would be a great mom for JJ.
Did that stand out to you?
A lot.
Why?
Most men that you date are not nearly so kind about their ex and describe them in more derogatory ways and don't speak so kindly. And I remember just thinking how odd, in a good way, it was that he was not speaking in a derogatory way about Lori.
On cross-examination,
do you go on dates with married men?
Naturally?
Argumentative. And I'm going to also object under 611 for harassment.
All right. I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, do I not have a right to cross-examine this witness for what she has already testified to?
You can cross-examine her about what she's testified to.
So you did go on a date with a married man,
I went on a date with Charles.
but you did not know he was married.
I knew his divorce was not final.
His divorce was not started.
Okay.
Okay. So in your text messages, you asked Charles if he was a good kisser. Is that correct?
Maybe, sure.
Did he answer that text message?
I'm
gonna
sure.
object to
I'm sure he did.
relevance. Again, 611, harassment.
I'll sustain the objection for relevance and hearsay.
So are you trying to tell me and this jury that you went on one date with my husband and he told you all the details of our lives?
I'm telling you the truth, and that's what I know.
So you spent your whole date getting to know each other, talking about me.
Don't flatter yourself. No, we did not spend the whole time talking about you.
You knew a lot about me, right?
I knew what I've testified to.
What else did you talk about on your date?
Lots of things.
Like what, for instance?
Life, kids, the church, lots of things.
Okay. Did he tell you about anything about our other 4 children?
Yes,
So you knew that we did have 5 children as well?
I did.
Okay. Did he talk to you about my daughter, Tylee?
He did.
Did he talk about his relationship with her?
I don't recall that.
Did he talk about the contention in his relationship with my daughter, Tylee?
I don't recall that.
I'm sure you don't.
And I'm going to object to comments by the defendant made after questions, testifying.
Right. We'll sustain the objection.
On your date, you talked about my husband was a life insurance salesman. Is that correct?
I knew he did something with money and insurance, but I really didn't know the details of what he did for work. Like I said, I don't ask the details about what someone does for work when I'm trying to get to know someone.
But you knew that he sold life insurance. You stated that.
I believe that I had a vague understanding that he did something with insurance.
And then he brought that up again at dinner.
No, we didn't talk about his work at dinner.
I thought you said you did talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said you did talk about that he changed the life insurance policy at dinner.
Well, you were asking me if we talked about that he sold insurance, which that didn't happen. But yes, he did tell me that he changed the beneficiary of his life insurance policy at dinner.
Did he tell you how much his life insurance policy was for?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
$1 million.
Did he tell you how much my life insurance policy was for?
I do not recall.
You don't recall?
We didn't talk about you very much in that vein.
When did you talk to him about me very much then? If it wasn't at dinner, was it in your text messages?
We were talking about what he was going through in the process of separating from you, not about what your life insurance policy was worth. And we talked about you on the phone, and when I say you, meaning what he was doing as he was going through this separation.
So let me understand. You were dating some different men on this website, right? From the websites?
Sure.
Would you say it was common for men to be talking so much about their supposed ex-wives during their conversations with a potential...
It's actually very common.
Really?
Really.
Interesting.
And again, Your Honor, I'm
right.
going to object to the defendant making comments after her questions.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I won't do that again.
All right, please stop.
I'll just ask the questions.
Thank you.
So there were some text messages between you and my husband after the dinner on July 10th. Is that correct?
Correct.
What time would those text messages have occurred?
After dinner,
What time?
10:45-ish.
10:45 to what?
I'm not certain, ma'am. After dinner.
10:45 to midnight, maybe?
I just told you I don't know. Maybe.
What did you discuss in those text messages?
And I'm going to object to relevance again. If there's a specific area.
Sustained.
You testified a minute ago that Charles told you a lot of things about his wife. You didn't say ex-wife, but you said wife. Is that correct?
Okay, sure.
What were a lot of things?
The things that I've testified to.
Can you be more specific?
Am I allowed to do a narrative then?
Let's go on sidebar.
This is a striking moment because the jury leaves the room and the judge asks Lori Vallow Daybell if she really wants to let Nancy Jo Hancock answer that question because it could open a really big door, possibly her dark history. When the jury came back in from lunch, Vallow Daybell ultimately shifted her questioning and the state did a brief redirect. Later, we heard from Adam Cox, Lori and Alex Cox's brother. He was worried Alex and Lori were planning something together. And now, after all that's happened, he said he's estranged from his family.
Was there anything else that you recall her telling you that she believed that seemed outside the LDS religion?
Yes. There was a time where she told me that she had more priesthood authority than the priesthood.
And why? Can you explain for us what that means, why that was significant to you?
In our religion, the men hold the priesthood, and she said that she's in a state where she's above that. Okay. I didn't quite understand it, but very strange.
Did you confront her about these beliefs?
Confront her? No.
Did you discuss with her about these beliefs?
I just let her say what she wanted to say.
Was there ever a conversation where, when she was telling you these things, where she asked if you thought she was crazy?
Yes.
How did you respond to that?
I said, I don't know if you're crazy, but what you're telling me is not true. It's not real.
After you said that, what happened to your relationship with Lori?
She stopped talking to me.
Okay. Were you ever aware of Lori believing that people could be dark or possessed by evil spirits?
I later have learned that, yes.
Did you ever try to tell your family about the beliefs that Lori had expressed to you?
Yes.
What was your family's reaction?
One of the reaction was, she's in a delusion, let her do whatever she's doing and she'll come out of it at some point.
How did this impact your relationship with your family when you're bringing up these concerns about Lori?
They basically cut me off.
So you bringing up your concerns about Lori's beliefs being at odds with the LDS religion sort of terminated your good relationship with your family?
Yes.
At the end of June of 2019, do you recall Charles sending you some emails that were purportedly written by him asking Chad Daybell to come out to Arizona and write a book for him?
Yes.
And did you, without going into it, did you review that email?
Yes.
Did you know Charles, what he had done in his life prior to selling insurance?
Yeah, I know that he played minor league baseball.
And in this email was the person pretending to be Charles asking about writing a book about his career?
Yes.
Was that something you knew Charles was not interested in?
No, he's not, or wasn't.
After you saw those emails that Charles had forwarded to you, where someone was reaching out to Chad, were they inviting Chad out to Arizona?
Yes.
After reading that and getting that forward and talking with Charles, did you believe that Lori was having an affair with Chad Daybell?
Yes.
Did you and Charles spend time talking about that?
Yes.
Was he kind of, I guess, in a tailspin? I'm not sure the best words to say from learning that.
Yeah, he seemed a little desperate.
Did Charles have some idea on how he thought he might be able to get Lori back into the LDS faith?
Yes.
What did you understand that to be?
Charles just thought that Lori was going overboard and that she was going to the temple like 5 times a week, and that's not normal in our religion, and that she was going a little off the wall. So he figured that if she got her temple recommend taken away from her, that she would come back to normal, who she was before she started in all this things that she was believing.
Now, you told us that you had heard yourself some ideas by Lori that were outside the LDS religion. Did Charles also tell you about other things that she had told him?
Yes.
Okay. And so, did you talk with Charles about something that we'll term an intervention?
Yes.
What did you mean by an intervention?
Intervention means Charles he's kind of desperate because nobody in our family would talk to him. I'm sure that, Lori had told people in our family not to talk to him. So he thought that, having an intervention would be getting in front of her, recording her, giving it to the stake president, or having the stake president hear what she was talking about and hear the crazy things that she was saying.
So the intervention was part of the way to try to get her to come back to the mainstream LDS beliefs.
Yes.
Did Charles ask you to help him with this intervention?
Yes, he did.
Did you guys have a specific plan, like on X date at X time, we're going to do this?
No.
One of the most uncomfortable moments of this trial came when Lori Vallow Daybell cross-examined her own brother.
Mr. Cox, how long has it been since we've seen each other in person?
Don't know.
When was the last time you saw me?
I don't recall.
So, has it been a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years,
Something
6 years,
like that.
7 years, 8 years?
Something.
Okay. So, you have no idea?
Nope.
You have no idea when the last time you saw me in person?
I don't know the year or how many years it's been.
Okay. So, did you see me at Colby's wedding in January 2018?
No, I was not there.
You didn't come to Colby's wedding?
No, I did not.
So did you see me sometime that year at my house?
Possibly.
Where Colby got married? That house.
I did see you at that house, yes.
At least one time.
Yes.
So possibly in 2018.
Yes.
And when was the last time we had any communications?
The last time I remember our communications was you and I were speaking in the kitchen when the family was over.
Okay. So you think that was that time in 2018?
I think so.
Okay. And were we eating my green chili chicken enchiladas?
Do not remember that.
You do not remember that?
Nope.
Is that what I made every time we had a family get together, which was like
10 times a year?
I don't remember that.
Okay. And when was the last time that we had a phone call or text message?
I have no idea.
Could it possibly be around that exact same time?
Possibly.
Okay. So that was possibly in early 2018?
Yes.
Okay. Who do you think initiated the final communication in our relationship?
Who concluded it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So right now it's 2025, is that correct?
Yes.
And so we haven't spoken in about 8 years? Would that be correct?
Probably 7 or 8 years.
Okay. So would you say up until that point that how often would we communicate before that?
Before what?
Before 2018?
Probably on a regular basis. Once a month, twice a month, 3 times a month.
Like a call or a text message?
Yes.
Just keeping in touch?
Yes.
You know of us living in Hawaii, and you were living in Kansas at the time?
Yes.
And in your career, you lived in lots of different places, is that correct?
Yes.
Austin?
Yes.
Dallas?
Yes.
New York?
Yes.
Wichita?
Yes.
Sacramento?
Yes.
Did I miss anything?
Others.
And I was in Texas?
Yes.
Arizona?
Yes.
Hawaii?
Yes.
So would you say that we were not physically close during the past 20 years?
Yes, I would say that.
So our communication would be solely family get-togethers, occasional text messages. Is that correct?
And phone calls, yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Cox, did you see or hear or personally witness me conspire with my brother Alex Cox to murder my husband Charles Vallow?
Repeat that again.
Okay. Did you see with your eyes or hear with your ears or personally witness me conspire with my brother Alex Cox to murder my husband Charles Vallow?
No.
Thank you. No more questions.
On redirect.
You were talking to your family after this happened. Did you actually tell them that you believed that Lori and Alex had conspired to kill Charles?
Yes.
Why was that?
Because Lori had told people that Charles was no longer living, that some guy named Ned was inside of his body, that there was a zombie living inside of him. And Alex didn't respond to any of my text messages when I was supposed to be with him. And he was at that house that morning. Lori talking crazy about how she's a translated being. All these things all added up into that moment and that morning. Once I found out on Saturday that Charles was shot and killed, no doubt in my mind that they killed him.
Later that day, Charles Vallow's sister, Kay Woodcock, took the stand. Kay Woodcock is a key player in all of this. She's not only Charles's sister, but the biological grandmother of J.J. Vallow, Lori and Charles's adopted son, who Lori is convicted of murdering. Kay and her husband were the first to raise the red flag after Charles's death that Lori's children might be in danger. She testified against Lori Vallow Daybell in Idaho, and she had no hesitation to do it again in Arizona.
In 2018, did you have some concerns about their relationship?
Yes, it was for him to come as often as they were coming was odd, and he was just unsettled, and we knew something was going on, but he would never say. Okay. So he talked to us when he was ready.
When we get into 2019, did you start to see your brother more?
Yes.
First, without going into what Charles said, did you ever become aware finally that his marriage with Lori was in trouble?
Yes, I did.
In 2019, again, without going into what Charles said, did you ever believe that Charles was concerned for his safety?
Charles was absolutely concerned for his safety.
So you talked to your brother, just kind of normal stuff as he was, before he got here to Phoenix. How did you learn that your brother Charles was dead?
It was on July the 12th. I was at a nail salon in Lake Charles, my granddaughter and I, and I got a call from his oldest son, Cole, and he said, "Hey, what is going on? I just got a text from Lori, and she said Dad's dead." And I said, "Wait, what did you just say?" And he told me again, and I said, "Something's wrong with that. That can't be true." And I said, "Have you tried to call her?" And Cole's like, "Yes, she won't. I'm trying calling. She's not answering." He was freaking out, and I was like, "Okay, Cole, just give me a minute. Let me think about this. Let me see, and I'll call you back. I promise. As soon as I can figure this out." So I called my husband to tell him, and he said, "Okay, well, I told him what the Cole said, and he said, 'Hey, let me call you back in a minute.'" And so I was still at the nail salon trying to get out of there, and he called and he said, "He's dead." I Googled him, and he's dead. Alex killed him yesterday. And I mean, that was just like, it was horrible. I have to call my siblings and let them know. Thank you. And everybody was freaked out. I didn't know what to do. But I did call Cole back and let him know that it was true, and just was telling him, let's keep in touch. You find out something, I find out something, we'll let each other know. And
did you try to reach out to Lori?
I've tried calling, texting Charles. I tried calling, texting Lori, and at some point she texted me. She returned a text, something like, "I'm having to deal with a lot of stuff and I'm busy," and she was too busy to even call his family to say that he was dead by her brother killing him. And
take a breath. So you had tried to reach her, and she was too busy to talk to you.
Yeah.
Did you ever? What was the burial plans? Did you ever get Charles back? What happened with him?
We ended up calling a detective, the detectives in Chandler, since that's where it happened, and we were able to speak to a detective. I don't know who, but we told them that we I had already arranged us a flight for the next day. We were here by noon Saturday because I needed to know where JJ was. I didn't know what he had seen. I didn't know what he knew. I knew he would be, I knew it wasn't good, but I couldn't, we had to talk to the detectives before I did anything with Lori. And we had to wait till Sunday to meet with Nate Moffitt. And then when we talked to him is when I told him about the life insurance policy and that Lori, that I didn't know if Charles had ever changed it to me like he said he was going to do. And so I didn't know, but I just knew we had to get JJ because he was not safe with her.
On cross-examination,
Ms. Woodcock, where were you on July 11th, 2019?
At home in Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Were you aware at all of the relationship between Charles and Tylee?
It was, let's say, it was a bit contemptuous. It seemed like there was always a lot of drama going on, and so that's all I knew. He didn't say too much about it, and I didn't pry.
But you knew that there was some kind of contention going on with those two for
I can't
a while.
hear you.
I'm sorry. You did know that there was some kind of contention going on with those two for a while.
Yes.
Okay. And you weren't really aware of the events that happened that morning, were you?
The morning of his murder?
Of July 11th?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
Because you didn't tell me.
Ms. Woodcock, did you see or hear or personally witness me conspire with Alex Cox to kill my husband, Charles Vallow?
No, but I saw a ton of evidence that did.
Thank you. No further questions.
in the days that followed, the state introduced more witnesses and evidence, like recordings of Lori Vallow Daybell trying to collect $1 million life insurance payout after Charles's death. The prosecutor laid out that Lori's brother, Alex Cox, waited more than 45 minutes to call 911 after the shooting, and that Lori didn't call for help at all. In fact, they showed evidence and surveillance footage that indicated Lori took Charles's phone and went to Burger King and Walgreens before taking their son to school, before ultimately returning to the crime scene. The jury saw damning text messages between Lori and her brother, Lori and Chad Daybell, reviewed by the case agent, Detective Nathan Duncan with the Chandler Police Department.
About 47 minutes later, on July 9th at 9:50 p.m., does Lori Vallow send her brother Alex Cox a message, getting sleepy, so I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple days. Mel too. She can't go to Utah. They are planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and store it or secure it. Lots to do. Thank you for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. When you saw that message, did you ever check Alex Cox's cell phone records to determine whether or not there was a phone call after that?
I did.
Did you see that Alex Cox and Lori Vallow talked on July 9th at 21:56 hours? What time would that be?
9:56.
So 6 minutes after this. for 56 minutes.
Correct.
So 6 minutes after this text message, Lori and her brother have almost an hour-long conversation.
Yes.
Now, in this message, when you were going through these records, did you recognize or learn who Nephi was?
So in going through this particular message, I knew that Nephi was a figure in the Book of Mormon related to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I didn't understand the significance. So I then did some research to find out who Nephi was.
You were present in court when Adam testified, correct?
Yes.
And did his testimony about Nephi being told by the Holy Spirit to kill Laban and that this was a justified killing match with what you had learned when you researched it?
Yes, it did.
As we get to July 14th, do we see Chad then talking about cleansing the Houston house?
Clearing the Houston?
Clearing?
Yeah.
Clearing the Houston house, sorry. To remove the darkness he caused.
Correct.
So who was living in Houston?
Charles.
And had you seen and heard people testify that Charles was considered dark by Lori Vallow?
Yes.
And again, we continue to see the affirmations of love,
Yes.
the cheek to cheek and loin to loin.
Yes.
Again, more conversations both of love in text messages as well as phone calls.
Correct.
So in Exhibit 229, do we see on July 18th at 12:18 Arizona time? So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. So it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to whom, of course, but it's done. I'll still get the $4,000 a month from Social Security.
Yes.
So on July 18th, after she talks with Banner Life Insurance, Lori tells Chad she's not getting the life insurance.
Correct.
But she tells him she's getting $4,000 a month from Social Security.
Correct.
Now we know from Lori Vallow's text to Alex that she went to Social Security on August 12th, correct?
Yes.
And we also had testimony from Social Security about that.
Correct.
But here it is on July 18th of 2018, and she already knows she's going to get money from Social Security.
Correct.
Again, do you see a lot of additional continuing everyday multiple affirmations of their relationship?
I do.
On cross-examination.
So as the case agent and a detective, do you form a suspicion and then stick to it and only investigate the things that lead you to that same conclusion?
No.
You had testified earlier about the story of Nephi, is that correct?
Yes.
And you said that you researched it, is that
did.
Correct? What research did you do?
Well, the very basic research. I Googled who is Nephi. What does Nephi stand for? I've also, through this process over the last 4 or 5 years, have asked other members of the church just a simple question. Tell me about Nephi. And every single person I talk to tells me that same story that was told by Adam.
So are you aware that there's 15 books in the Book of Mormon?
I am not.
Are you aware that 4 of those books are books of Nephi?
I am not.
That there's Nephi 1, 1st Nephi, 2nd Nephi, 3rd Nephi, 4th Nephi?
No, I'm not.
Okay. That there's many stories of Nephi. Is that correct? Or you don't know?
I don't know.
So the very first story is the story that...
I'm going to object to testifying.
It sounds like that's the way it was going. So please just ask questions.
So you did not read the Book of Mormon?
No.
You did not read First Nephi?
No.
You just asked people. That was your research?
I asked members of that particular church, and I also did an internet search, yes.
So you did an internet search, and it gave you all the stories of Nephi?
That's the story that came up.
So how long did you do that research for?
I couldn't tell you.
So in your research, did you discover that there's about 25 stories of Nephi in that Book of Mormon?
I didn't see that, no.
And that there's 4 different prophets that are called Nephi in the Book of Mormon?
I'm going to again object as to testifying, and the detective has already indicated, so asked and answered.
I'll overrule the objection. He can ask if he knows that or not.
What was the question? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I can't remember. Can the court reporter tell
There's
us?
4 different people referred to as Nephi.
Yeah, 4 different prophets in the Book of Mormon that are Nephi. Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay. So isn't it true that you really have no idea what I was referring to when I referenced Nephi in my text message?
I can only go off of what I see. I can't tell you what you're thinking or what you're trying to relay there. But based on my knowledge and based on talking to people about who is Nephi, that is a story that came up consistently.
You relayed to the jury that it was in order to kill. You relayed to the jury.
I said that the story was the same story and similar to Adam told.
Okay, and you said it earlier that was in order to kill, that I referenced Nephi. I will be like Nephi and you will be like Nephi. To the jury here today.
Ask a question. That's a statement, not a question.
Do you have knowledge that my text message meant that at all?
No.
Are you aware through all of your investigation of this case that my brother was a stand-up comedian, Alex?
I had heard that, yes.
And that everything is a joke to Alex?
I can't speak for that.
So when you're interpreting all these text messages and making all these assumptions, half of them could be jokes and you would not know that?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Were you speculating when you read my text messages?
I think I'm just reading your text messages. I don't think I was drawing any inference from them. I was just simply reading them.
Well, today you were explaining them to the jury. Is that true?
Those were read. There was no explanation as to what it meant.
After the state rested its case, the judge asked Lori Vallow Daybell what she planned to do. She didn't have to testify or present a case. The burden of proof is on the state. But leading up to and throughout the trial, she indicated that she would, fighting to keep witnesses on her list. So it shocked the court when she said this.
The state is present, the defense is present, the jury is not present. This is the time set to discuss the final jury instructions. Let me confirm with the defendant that, is it still your intention to not put on any evidence?
Right now, Your Honor, yes. As of this morning, I mean.
Well, do you anticipate that changing?
No.
All right.
Next up, closing arguments. The prosecutor spent more than an hour and a half laying out her case, reviewing essentially each piece of evidence and each witness's testimony. Lori Vallow Daybell spent about 20 minutes in her last pitch to the jurors.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state of Arizona has the 100% burden of proving that I committed a crime, a grievous crime, conspiracy to commit premeditated murder of my husband, Charles Vallow. The state has the burden of proving to you that this event was not self-defense. In your jury instruction under the instruction, use of force and crime prevention, the last line reads, if the state fails to carry this burden, then you must find the defendant not guilty. In the law, under your jury instruction titled Justification for Defense of a Third Party, the last line reads, if the state fails to carry this burden, you must find the defendant not guilty. Under your jury instruction titled Justification for Self-Defense, the last line reads, if the state fails to carry this burden, you must find the defendant not guilty. In your jury instruction, under presumption of innocence, it states, the law does not require the defendant to prove innocence. Every defendant is presumed by law to be innocent. Under the burden of proof, it explains that the state's burden is this. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof that leaves you firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt. If, on the other hand, you think there's a real possibility that he is not guilty, you must give him the benefit of the doubt and find him not guilty. In Arizona, self-defense is defined as not being a crime. So let's look at what we've learned in this trial. We learned that a shooting occurred and that 911 was called, that law enforcement was notified. We learned that fire, EMS, and Chandler police arrived at the scene. We learned that my brother, Alex Cox, came out of the house with his hands up as directed by 911 and was questioned by the police in the driveway. We learned that I came up with my daughter Tylee, and we were told to wait by the car until police would speak with us. We learned from Detective Inklin on the stand that we asked for Tylee's medication from the house for her panic attacks, but it was not given to her. We learned that eventually my brother Alex was taken in a police car to the Chandler Police Department uncuffed. We learned in this trial that my daughter Tylee and I were also taken to Chandler Police Department in a police van. We heard from Detective Inklin's testimony that her goal was to make small talk with us. And
The jury will determine what the testimony did or did not show. Go ahead.
that her goal was to make the small talk with us and all the way to the station so she could speak with us separately before we would talk about what actually happened. We learned that all three of us were separated and taken to 3 interview rooms, where we each told police of the events of the day, each from our own perspectives, and answered all questions asked of us. We saw snippets of that interview in the trial here. The state did not show you the entire interview. Most of my police interview is admitted, though, into evidence in this exhibit. It's number 286, and I would encourage you to watch that entire interview when you start your deliberations. It is important. It is important for you to determine for yourselves my demeanor and not listen to anyone else. You can see it with your own eyes and hear it with your own ears. We heard from several witnesses that because this event was almost 6 years ago, that their memories of the events and statements were probably better back then. Well, my police interview happened that very morning, and I told the police the events from my perspective at that time. It is admitted into evidence and will answer many of your questions. You did not see Tylee's interview, but we did learn from Detective Inklin that she did an interview that morning as well. You did not see Alex's interview, but we learned that Alex was interviewed that morning by Detective Moffett, the original case agent, whom we did not hear from in this trial. The state chose not to show you those interviews.
Objection, Honor.
Or let you listen to the 911 call.
The jury shall disregard that last statement. Okay, the jury can only consider what was admitted into evidence.
We learned in this trial from Officer Kautheim's testimony that Alex was injured on the back of his head with a bump and, according to his testimony, a 1-inch laceration. We did not see those pictures documenting that injury as well. We learned in this trial that we did not know, the three of us, that our interviews were being recorded. We learned that Alex's phone was taken by police and put into an evidence bag, according to Detective Duncan, and that no digital copy of Alex's phone was taken by the Chandler Police Department, even though this is their normal protocol. We learned that Alex's phone was returned to him that same day with no further inquiries. We learned that after my interview and Tylee's interview that we were introduced to a victim's advocate and that gave us further instructions in another room where Tylee and I were reunited. We learned that soon after that, all three of us, Alex, Tylee, and myself, were taken in another van and dropped off back at our house. We learned that we were instructed at that time that we could not enter the house yet, that we were directed by law enforcement to take the rental car, since all three of our cars were inside the police tape. We were directed to return later in the afternoon when the scene was cleaned up. We learned in this trial that we did as directed and left the house in the rental car close to 12 p.m. We learned that we did not return to the house until contacted by Detective Inkland to return to the house so that Alex could walk the detectives through what they call a walkthrough. We learned that many detectives were present during that walkthrough with Alex. We learned that Detective Duncan was there, Detective Coons was there, Detective Moffett was there, Detective Werther was there, and an officer with a body cam was there. And yet, we were told by Detective Duncan, the case agent on this case on the stand, that because of some problem, the walkthrough was not recorded. Detective Duncan also informed us that he does not know if any of the people present wrote a report about it. We can infer from Detective Duncan's testimony and the fact that we don't have in evidence any body cam footage of the walkthrough and no reports talking about it, that there are none, even though this would be crucial evidence for you, the jury, to have.
Sustained, the jury should disregard that comment. Again, the jury can only consider evidence that was admitted into testimony. Testimony that was admitted into evidence or exhibits that were admitted into evidence.
The state of Arizona has the obligation to show you evidence to prove that this event was not self-defense, as stated by the only three witnesses. So why not show the jury all the evidence that they gathered?
Again, sustained, the jury can only consider the evidence and testimony that was admitted into evidence.
We learned in this trial that Alex fully cooperated with law enforcement. We learned that my daughter Tylee fully cooperated with law enforcement. We learned that I fully cooperated with law enforcement. We learned that law enforcement treated all of us that day kindly and courteously on July 11th, 2019. That law enforcement treated us that day like this was self-defense. We were not given instructions to stay in town. We were not given instructions that we were under investigation of any kind. On July 11th, 2019, we were interviewed by Chandler Police and released with no further instructions. We learned that Chandler Police put out a press release that day on July 11th.
I'll sustain that objection to the extent the jury is to determine what the facts did or did not establish.
Under Arizona law, I had the right to self-defense. Tylee had the right to self-defense. Alex had the right to self-defense. This event was not planned or expected. It was shocking. We learned in this trial that Chandler Police Department neglected to do a thorough investigation. We learned that they did not swab Alex's hands for gunpowder residue. We learned that they did not swab my hands for gunpowder residue. We learned that they did not swab Tylee's hands for gunpowder residue. We learned that they did not luminol the gun. We learned that they did not luminol the bat. They did not test the DNA on the bat that they collected. They did not test the floorboard. They did not test the projectile. They did not test my husband's shirt. They did not search the rental car. They did not search any of our 3 cars that were there at the scene. They did not test the gun until over 5 years later. The Chandler Police Department did treat this event just like it was, self-defense, and a tragic family event. We learned in this trial that Charles and I were obviously having marital problems. Regardless of what was happening in our marriage at the time, on July 11th, this was self-defense. When Tylee came out with the bat to protect me, her mother, Charles did not have to take the bat from Tylee and start swinging. At 62 years old, Charles had a choice that day and could have put the bat down. A 2-minute period changed our lives forever. How are you supposed to choose between 3 people you love? Your husband, your daughter, your brother?
All right, hold on. All right, I'll caution the defendant not to testify about things that were not entered into evidence.
How can you decide for another person if they feel threatened? Why does the state want to blame to someone?
It's a reasonable person standard, not the standard of the person.
I'm sure you'll point that out in rebuttal. I'll allow the argument as that inference. Go ahead.
Why does the state want to blame someone for this tragic event? What evidence did the state show you in this trial that I wanted harm to come to my husband? We learned in this trial that I was praying for my husband. We learned in this trial that even though my husband and I were having marital issues, that we were both trying to do the best things for our son with special needs, JJ. We learned in this trial that I was shocked that Charles had changed his life insurance policy, but I was not angry as the state alleges. In the phone call we heard from the insurance company, we heard that I was disappointed for our children, our grown children, as well as our children still at home, but I was not angry. My husband Charles was providing for our children still at home. I had no motive to change that. We heard a lot in this trial about the Book of Mormon prophet named Nephi. This is the state's evidence to murder over self-defense, and it is utterly ridiculous. We heard from Detective Duncan, who admitted on the stand that he had no idea what I meant in the text message when I said, "We will be like Nephi." In Mormon culture, Nephi signifies strong faith, perseverance, and courage.
Right. That's sustained.
The state's attempt to misconstrue the positive text message about a wonderful religious figure, Nephi, and try to turn it into an order to kill someone is absurd. This is an attempt by the state to try to retrofit a crime that doesn't exist. This event was not a crime. It was a tragedy. Don't let them turn my family tragedy into a crime. When I'm done speaking to you, the state gets to get up and rebut all that I've told you. They've got to have the last word, so to speak, because it is 100% their burden to prove to you that I committed a crime. And you won't be allowed to hear from me again. So I want you to remember that it is the state's job to prove to you that I committed a crime. And if you have not seen the evidence that leaves you firmly convinced that I have committed this very crime, then the state failed to show you the evidence that you need. Because I did not commit this crime. The only interview the state entered into evidence is mine. So I encourage you to go watch it. I told you just what happened that day, just the way it happened. The state put forth a bunch of evidence in this trial in an effort to make you dislike me, to try to attack my character, so that you would just say guilty no matter what evidence they showed you. But only you get to decide. The state put up witnesses that had zero knowledge of a conspiracy. The state did not show you evidence of an agreement to commit murder. They showed you evidence of a family tragedy, and then they showed you the sad effects of a family torn apart because of that tragedy. That's all.
All right, the state does have the burden, so they have the right to open and close the argument. Do you want to give a rebuttal close? Go ahead.
The execution of Charles Vallow is not a family tragedy. There is nothing that you can say about shooting a man as he lay on the ground that you can try to construe in any way to make that a family tragedy. This case is about the defendant, not Alex Cox. Alex is involved in it because that is her co-conspirator. We are not here to determine his guilt, albeit it is quite obvious. This defendant wants you to just look at one piece, and she wants you to hope that there's only a person who will say, I saw, I heard the conspiracy. But what did you hear in every instruction is that you can look to other evidence to show that. This defendant wants you to forget about her words and pretend that when she told her lover, her soon-to-be husband, we got rid of him, that he changed the life insurance before we got rid of him, that somehow means what? That they killed him. And he changed his life insurance before they killed him. What does that tell you? That tells you motive, and that tells you who did it. This defendant is one of those we, because she's writing it. She wants you to pretend that when she is talking about Charles for months, acquiescing and agreeing to her brother killing him, having people tell her that it's wrong, having people know that they're planning for something, that those words don't mean exactly what they are. We got rid of him, this defendant. The state, of course, has the burden, and that's how it should be. But every one of those justification defenses falls short when you look at the conspiracy itself. When they got rid of him, they did